Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new series. We are doing something really cool this time. Not that all the other things aren't really cool, but this is really cool. So normally we paint 6th scale heads, things that are sort of that size, little action figure. Things for like, where is he? That size or that size. Not doing that today. Today we are doing a statue, and a big statue. I've been sent a thing that a guy had sculpted, and I was watching the process, and he would send me pictures as it was slowly building up, and he finally got it finished, finally sent it to me, and now I've got to paint it for him, and it's going to be brilliant. I'm going to get some really cool detail and atmosphere and character on this one, I think. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up, because if I can move over this way, if this works, I am going to be painting a statue of that guy. How cool is that? And it's not a 12-inch statue, it's like 18 inches or something. It's huge. I'll show you it in a sec. So it's basically him. It's going to be brilliant. Now, I've done a load of research on the clothing and everything like that. I've gone through all the prop replica forums where people have been making their own versions, who've been researching what did the originals look like. So I know the colour of everything, what type of material everything was. So I'm going to be able to replicate it as much as I can, but also tread that balance of getting it right to how the original thing was and getting it right to how it looks on screen. So that'll be an interesting balance. Also, you can see in that picture that looks brown, the poncho. It's actually green. It started out green, sort of almost quite bright olive green, and through the course of filming was it 3 films? Apparently Clint Eastwood just didn't wash it, so it got dirtier and dirtier as it progressed, and it ended up, when you look on some pictures or some screen caps, the top bit that you see is a very dirty brownish colour, but if you lift it up and look underneath, it's green because it hasn't got as dirty yet. So that's what I keep pointing the wrong way. That's what's going to be interesting about doing that. The bit that is sort of going across his shoulder, and the bit that's going down his back, that's the dirty brown worn out colour, and the bit that's coming down his arm there, that's going to be a little bit more green. Now this picture doesn't show it. It's a bad picture because it just makes everything look brown, but it's not. So it's going to be interesting getting that realism, and because it's a western and because they're in the desert and it's dusty, going to be able to get loads of weathering on this thing. So let me have a sip of my coffee. This is going to be so cool. Right, let me get that off the screen. Cool. I've never done that before. Right, I'll bring in this camera. That should be about right, and I will jump to the close-up. There you go. That's close enough. So let me show you this. So there's the head. I mean, it's huge. I'm assuming it's sort of premium format size, like the sideshow statues, but it's a kit. It's in pieces. So we'll be gluing it together and we'll be putting it together as we go along, but obviously mainly we'll be painting it all. So there's things like the guns, it's got the snake detail on the handle, got the big hands, be able to get loads of detail on those, paint the fingernails and everything. And then this thing weighs a ton. Hang on, let me put me in the corner. Hello. So this thing, because it's made of resin and it's like solid resin, it's just so heavy. I can't even fit it in. Let me lift the camera up a little bit higher. There you go. So this thing, I'm going to have to be careful when I'm painting this because it's so heavy. And it would be very easy to drop this, and I don't want to break it. I mean, if it broke, I could fix it, but I would rather not have to. So we've got all this, and so that's the poncho. That's the bit. That's the sort of this bit across the top, and then down the back is the dirty stuff that over the years just became more and more brown and worn out. And this bit that's underneath is more olive green, and I'm gonna make that difference so you can see it. So it's got, the clothing has more story to it than just if I paint it all one colour. It will look like it's got a life, like it's been through a life, and there'll be reasons why, and it'll be interesting to do that. And then these are his shirt, which is, it's actually a blue and white, very, very fine stripe, and I suspect it's going to be too fine for me to try and paint without it looking stupid. We'll get to that when we get to it. It might be more realistic to just paint it a mixture of the two colours. I think it's like a pale, very pale blue, almost white or grey, and blue stripes, but very thin stripes. And it might be better to just paint it a colour that overall, when you look at it from a distance, it looks right, but put some detail and weathering and stuff on it, rather than try to paint hundreds, thousands, whatever, of individual stripes that if you get them looking a little bit wrong, they just won't look right. It'll look like a thing that's been painted, as opposed to the rest of it, which hopefully will just look real. So I'll figure that out. I'll do a little bit of testing on that. Well, we'll do a bit of testing. You're going to be watching me do it. You got a belt. You got this, which is going to be great to paint. This is like a sheepskin vest. So you got the fluffy bit on the inside there, and all of this is going to be the sort of creamy brown colour, but with loads of different variations on it. That'll be great fun to paint that. Now, it's going to be difficult doing the cloak, because the cloak itself, anyone who's seen the films know that there are white patterns, squares and lines all over this thing. That's going to be a pain in the backside to paint, but paint it we shall. So there you go. That is what we're doing. Let me jump back to that a sec. So that's what we're doing this time. And it's going to be fun, and it's going to be different, and it's going to be interesting, because I don't normally do, I do statues, but I don't normally get full kits that I have to put together. I normally get sent completed statues and I just repaint them. They're a pain in the bum to do. So I do that, but being sent one that's in pieces is going to be interesting. Now, normally, if I was doing a smaller kit, I think what I would do would be put it all together and paint it as a piece. But because this is so big, I mean, this thing, if it's standing up, it's going to be about that big. That's going to be impossible to be able to paint. Because when I'm painting a face, I'll be painting bits, and then I might turn the head upside down to get to other bits. And you can't do that if it's a statue that's this big that weighs a ton. So what I think I'll do is I'll paint all of the bits separately as separate pieces. And then at some point when they are done or almost done, put the thing together and then just do final details once it's together. I think that's going to be the way that will work best for me. I've not tried to fit this all together yet. I'm assuming it works because it's been made and it's been sent to me. If at any point I discover that some pieces don't fit together, then I will just have to deal with that, and we'll make things fit, and we'll do whatever things we need to. Hopefully it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. But yeah, so there you go. Big, huge, raggedy Clint Eastwood. We might as well get on with it, because I could sit here and talk about it for ages, and it's kind of difficult because when I start ahead, I sort of go into the same routines. I get my tanned flesh and I just start painting it. But this is like, ooh, where do I start? Oh. Okay, let me see. Because I've got a folder full of reference pictures that I've got from the internet. I mean, even things like the gun, which in this case is just half of the gun because it goes in the holster like that, and you don't need to see you don't see the rest of it, so it only needs to be that much. But I've got pictures of guns made by people who make sort of real replicas, so I know what colour the metal should be and everything. That'll be really interesting, putting detail on something like that. Sort of similar when I've painted Lord of the Rings statues, trying to make the swords look weathered and stuff like that. But I've got a load of photos of screen grabs, Clint in the film, costume pieces like the actual poncho that someone found on display somewhere and took pictures of it, replicas, but where people have really done a load of research. So I've got all the pictures that I need. I think I move all these pieces out of the way and we just start. I think I'll start just because it's probably the quickest way and I don't have to think about it too much while we're on camera. I'll start with the skin based stuff, so the head and the hands, and then we'll do that for a bit, and then probably on the next videos we'll move on to things like the big body pieces like that. It's so heavy. It's so heavy. Things like that. And we'll get onto that in another video. So I'll get that out of the way. Oh my god, it's so heavy. Get these out of the way. Move his legs. Move his guns. Right. Let me get my palette here. Get another piece of tissue. Right, let's bring in the camera again. Bring that down a little bit. Right. Okay, where's the focus? That should be okay. So it's already been, the guy who sculpted it has already sprayed it with grey primer. It's done it quite thick, but it'll be fine once I've painted it. Yeah, I can add some detail onto that. Okay, let's get me in the bottom right corner. Hello. Right, let's get started on this. I'll have to make sure that that doesn't happen. I just put that down and the head rolled around, and I don't want to break the cigarette. The cigarette. Actually, that's how I'll do it. I'll stand it upright. Okay, so tanned flesh. I will just do my usual thin washes of this colour. I'll get a bigger brush this time because it's a bigger piece. Okay, take the lid off my flow enhancer. Could use water, but I use that because it helps the paint flow more like paint. Instead of thinning it down and making it more like water, it thins down the colour, but it still sort of feels like paint, so it's good to work with. Now, this is going to be difficult because normally I have heads on sticks and stuff, and I'm just going to have to hold this but try not to touch it too much, and then put stuff off to one side while it's drying. I might, in between videos, see if I can glue a stick to the bottom of that so we can work with it. because I don't want to be holding things too much and getting the oils from my hands on it. But we'll be okay. Alright, let's just do what I normally do. Oh, that's too thick. I'll get a bit of water to just thin it down normally. I just want this to be a thin first layer. Actually, just let me check, because I haven't done my usual first checks. Music playing in the background, video is recording, and my voice is being recorded too. Okay, I have to check, because I've done that before, where I start talking and I film a load of stuff and then something is not right, like the volume wasn't being recorded or it wasn't recording at all. I've done that. I've filmed for an hour and I hadn't pressed start, or I'd pressed the wrong button. Because I am me and I am stupid. So I have to check every time I do that. I'm sure it'll get boring with me always going, hang on, let me check what I'm doing. But I've got to, because if I don't, you don't get videos. Because I'm stupid. So this is the usual first step. We are just putting on a thin layer all over. We'll do a few thin layers. I might do some of them off camera just because it's the same thing over and over again. But I'll do this here. And where there's a beard, I'm doing this. I'm just getting some of that extra paint out of his ear. Where there's a beard, if it's a really thick beard, then I only paint up to the beard, because it's going to be black or brown or whatever it is. But if it's quite a thin, stubbly beard, then what I usually do is paint the skin colour underneath it, because there are always bits where that shows through, and I paint the skin colour underneath it and then paint the stubbly beard on top. So what you get is bits of the skin showing through without you having to sort of fake it and paint them on and, you know, pretend that they are there. You actually get the skin colour underneath. And it just makes it a little bit easier because you're putting thin stubble on top of something. Because otherwise you'd have to try and paint the stubble colour how it looks with skin underneath it, and it would just end up being more hassle and more difficult than it needs to be. So I have to make sure I'm always holding this in front of the camera, because I'm stupid and I don't sometimes. So yeah, because of the kind of stubble. Why is my music stopped? Hey, music. Oh, it's okay. Just got to the end of the track, which goes quiet for a bit. There you go. So I'm just being as careful as I can around the eyes with this big brush. I will go in with a small brush and do detailed stuff. Just trying to avoid, doesn't matter too much at this stage because it's only thin paint, but just trying to avoid getting some on the eyeball. I mean, his eyeballs are so thin and slitty here that he doesn't have very wide open eyes. He squints a lot, so there's not much eyeball to see anyway, but I'd rather not get extra paint on it if I didn't need to. Let's paint his lips. Sometimes I don't do that, sometimes I do. We'll do that in this case. Make sure we've got the skin colour going up to the cigar. So yeah, the stubble gets painted with the skin colour, and then we just go over that in layers, and we will discover as we go along how we're going to do that. Because I haven't yet studied his stubble, and this is something we've talked about on previous videos, where every person, every actor, every character, every human being, their stubble, their beard shapes, oops, sorry, hit the camera there with my brush, the stubble and the beard shapes are all different. Now this has sort of been sculpted on a bit. There you go, you can sort of see it there. But I'll end up painting the shape and the strength and the texture and the colour and individual hairs, rather than relying on the scraped in lines of this. And it's a good sculpt. It's not the most detailed sculpt I've ever worked on, so there's going to be an element of adding in detail where there is none, and making some details more accurate where they're quite simplified on this. And the stubble is a case of that. Basically, it's been sculpted by sort of a lot of lines being scraped into it, but the lines are longer than they should be for the length of stubble. So they're actually quite long down the face, so I'll be using paint to break those up and make them look more realistic. But the overall look of the thing is going to be amazing, because I mean, you can see it looks cool. He's got the shape right and everything. And so let me just grab hold of that by his hair. So that's the first thin layer on there. Put that off to one side. So the overall look is going to be brilliant. I don't know how far up. I've not fit that part in yet to test fit it, so I'm assuming it goes all the way up to there, and that bit shows through his shirt sleeve or something. Now, these pieces are quite dusty. It's like dusty. I think it's just how the primer has been sprayed on. I'll sort that out while I'm going along. Anything that needs wiping off or touching up as we go along will be fine, as long as I get the colours on there. And I can build up the correct layers. You won't see any things that have needed touching up along the way, because once things are finished, you don't see all that. Now, one thing I have to confess, even though I've done a ton of research and a ton of reading up and downloaded pictures and read through forums of people discussing all the different parts and everything, I've never actually seen the films. So what I'm going to do, and before I get this piece finished, hopefully, is buy the Blu-ray set of the films. I think it's 3 films. I hope I'm right with that. And I'll get them watched. Now, I usually try and do that anyway, because it helps. Sometimes you can see things when you're actually watching the film that you don't see if you're just downloading reference pictures. But for now, I've done enough research and seen enough pictures that I know what everything needs to look like, both going by how stuff looks on screen, but also how the actual items looked for real. the colours of the fabrics and everything. So I do know all that. But I want to see the films, partly because it's always useful when it's something that I'm painting, but also just because I can't believe I haven't seen the films. They're supposed to be good. Everyone goes on about them. So I'm going to use this as an excuse to buy myself the Blu-rays and watch the flipping films. Now, I know my wife will have seen them a million times because she was doing film studies, media studies, and she will have been made to watch all, important films and good films over the years to study how directors do things and everything. So she's probably sick of the films. So I might be watching them by myself. But that's okay. I do not mind watching things by myself. Okay, so I've got a thin coat on most of that. So there's a thin layer on a hand. How am I going to put this down without... Hadn't really thought this through, had I? You know what? I'm just going to put it down like that on the board. Put it over here on my desk. The tips of the fingers should be dry enough that it won't cause a problem. Actually, I need more paint here. Some more paint and some more thinner. And what I'll do between videos is see if I can, for the hands and for the face, there's not much I can do about the big pieces, but they shouldn't be a problem. Make sure I'm doing this on camera. They shouldn't be a problem because they're broke up into different pieces. Like the bottom half, there are boots and there are trousers and there's the joins between all those pieces. So I can paint one thing and then set the piece down and it will sit on the piece that I've not painted. Whereas when you're doing bits like this, where it's just a head or a hand, there's no bits that won't be painted. Once you're painting a thing, you're sort of painting the whole thing. And I'm trying my best to not touch it, because and this is a thing that I've talked about on previous videos. I know when you work on something, I always make sure that my hands are washed before I work on it, just because just by holding it you can get oils from your hands transferred onto a thing and you don't see anything at first. You don't know it happened, but over the days or the weeks or however long you're working on something, because the piece has picked up oils from your hands, it then picks up either dirt from your fingers or just dust from the atmosphere or whatever, and it ends up looking really dirty and dusty and grimy just because you're holding it a lot. So that's one of the reasons why I end up putting all the heads on sticks when I'm working on them, to avoid that. Also, it's just easier to work on them when you've got a way to hold them that is avoiding the bit that you're actually trying to paint. So it makes it easier anyway, but it also avoids getting oils on the things. Now with these, I'm sort of holding it, there's a little spindly bit in his wrist that will glue into the main body. But apart from that, I've got no way I can set this down without actually just putting it on the table. So hopefully by the time I put it down, the bits that it leans on will be dry enough that it'll just sit there and it'll dry, and then I'll lift it up and it won't make any difference. And don't forget, there's going to be 2 or 3 more coats on top of this anyway. And by that time, I will have figured out a way to do this. I mean, when I'm doing the later coat, I might just do a coat on one half, sit it down on the back, do a coat on the other half, sit it down on the front. That's probably a way to do it, actually, which I should have done here, but I'm trying to turn it around and I don't want to drop it. There you go. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Oh, make sure I'm not getting paint on my Deadpool t-shirt. Deadpool. Okay. So that'll do there. Tell you what, while we're going, might as well keep it going, because this is half an hour, and we are half an hour in so far, and seeing as you are already here, and to save me stopping, because it's quite a boring thing anyway, might as well carry on and do another layer. We thin that down a little bit more. Now don't forget, this is, even with the multiple layers that I'm doing here, this is all just the base colour that gets dry brushed on top. It gets thin layers painted on top, sort of with a tiny brush and hand painted details. It gets we put on detail by flicking the bristles of the brush to get paint splatters on there to create the effect of skin and stubble and all the rest of it. Imperfections, basically. That's what we're trying to get. And they are all different ways that we can do that. So this is just a base layer, but it does take a few layers, especially because I paint it on quite thin, to cover the grey primer or the white primer. It doesn't matter, whatever colour you use, in order to get a solid layer of paint. It takes a few layers, but because they are thin layers, it doesn't affect the sculpt at all. You don't lose any detail. Now if I painted it on really thick, you probably would lose some detail, but I don't. I do it thin, and I just do it in layers until I've got just enough, and then I start building it up with all the other extra details, and that all covers it up more so. Now it would probably be different if I had an airbrush, because I don't know how that works, if they're able to cover areas with one single thing, or if it's just pretty much the same, you just do thin layers. Because I've never used an airbrush, I don't have one, I don't know how they work. There are probably lots of things that I could do that would be significantly quicker if I had an airbrush. But this is a thing that I've talked about before. Oops, make sure it's under the camera, Darren. I actually like the fact that everything that I have painted, every single commission that a person receives, has been physically hand painted, and there has been physical contact between me and the brush and the thing. And to me, that just adds some extra story to it. So just spraying it from a distance and going psh, and it's done. I don't like that. I like the fact that everything has been painted by hand. I like that. Now to some people it might not matter, and they'll be like, oh, I'm going to someone who's got an airbrush, he does it quicker. That's fine. Go to someone who's got an airbrush then. But it's not why people come to me. A little bit there. Now I'll see when that's dry, but I might get away with just 2 layers on that. I might not, I might need to do another one. Because the thing is to remember, well, the thing for me to remember is that he's very suntanned, very grimy, very dirty looking. You know, he's out in the desert. Just try and get hold of that by the hair. There you go. So I'll be building up layers with all the different colours to portray that level of desert griminess. So there's going to be a lot of detail and a lot of colour added to that. So I don't think it's going to matter as much how pure the base layer is. Like with, you know, if it was, let's say, a female character who had very smooth skin, it would be more important because there's nothing to hide, or there's nowhere to hide what the base layer looks like. it has to be sort of perfect, and then you build up the variations on top. But with this, basically looks like he's been rolling around in the desert mud for weeks, so it's a bit more forgiving. I'm just going to do the one side there, so that other side means I can put it down without it touching the bit that I've just painted, which is what I should have done last time. I'll do the same here, just paint the top. So yeah, because he's quite grimy, that's going to be quite forgiving in it, what the base layer looks like. So I will see what the face looks like after this second coat has dried, and we'll go from there. If it needs a third layer, I will just do that off screen, because I'm going to be just doing exactly the same as you've just seen me do, and you don't need to see it for a third time. There's nothing different. If I decide, you know what, that looks fine, we can carry on now, then we'll just carry on painting from there. So again, just doing the top half of this hand, and then I'll put it down, pick up the other half, do the underneath. Now, that's still drying, but if I pick it up and turn it over, nope, that's difficult. Right, there you go. While I've still got paint, and before it starts drying and getting clumpy and sticky and weird, I'm going to use up the paint that I've got and get these done quickly, and then we can just leave them to dry and come back on another video. And this is really one of those jobs, one of those commissions where you know you're going to be excited to do the later on stages, because I'm really looking forward to painting. Well, there's a few things I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to painting his face, just to get that level of sort of dirty desert man. I can't think of a way to describe him. I want to get that character in his face, that story just built into his face. I'm really looking forward to doing that. But I'm also looking forward to doing the things like his clothes. I mean, even just something simple like the sheepskin vest that he wears. That's going to be really cool to paint, because there's all sorts of colours and textures on that, and sometimes when you paint stuff, they're quite simple in how they look, and you're not doing too much work to add in detail or anything. You're just painting them to make them look, okay. And you add in as much detail as you want, and I usually put in quite a lot of variation. I mean, you've seen my videos, but different things have different levels. But the sheepskin vest that he wears, there are so many different, there's yellows and greys and browns and loads of colours going on. And the sculpt itself is basically just a flat sculpt. There's not much detail on there or anything. So I'm really looking forward to, not into, helps if I can speak English. I'm really looking forward to turning what is a completely flat surface into something really textured and alive and dirty, and it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to this one, and I think it's going to be good, and I think it's going to be interesting for people because it's a full statue, and I think it's going to be interesting for people because it's a really cool character, and also because it's something that we haven't done before. Right, I'm going to put my brush away because I'm going to let those pieces dry. Let me jump to the main camera. Where's my cursor gone? Boom. So I'm going to let them dry, and I will have a look at them again and see if they need another layer. If they do need another layer, I will just do that off camera, because there's no point in letting you see something for a third time. If not, we'll just carry on. So I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, even just things like the little gun. This is just flat resin, but I'm going to make it look like metal that has had heat applied to it. And you know the way metal sort of goes a bit blue and a bit orange and a bit brown with like you see on car exhausts or on guns. I'm going to be trying to do all that with this to make it look like a gun that's been used loads and killed loads of people. It's going to be cool. So we will do that later. It's going to be a good one, and it's going to be interesting. So right, I'm going to go. I'm going to make myself another coffee, or finish the coffee that I have. Ooh, no, I've still got a bit. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoy this one. I think you will. If not, there's going to be something else coming up straight afterwards, because we're doing loads of things. It's really cool. So see you soon. Take care of each other. Behave. Be nice. Try and make the planet a better place. God knows we need it. And I will see you soon. Take care, guys.